I'm back at the beach again on a Sunday afternoon. Today high tide is about an hour after sunset, so I'll be fishing from about 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock, so 2 hours of the rising tide, where the high tide's at 6 o'clock. I'm using today a new rod from Nobi. It's a 10'6" A6 surf jigging rod. It's a beautiful rod. It's really lightweight but quite powerful. This particular model is the 1062 medium heavy. The medium heavy rod can cast jigs from about 15 grams up to 60, so it's got a decent range. Today I've got my Shimano Twin Power 5000 XG, which is the lightweight 5000 twin power reel with a 15-pound braid. To start off with, I'm going to be using a Jigging Pro 30-gram silver tungsten jig with small hooks. Usually at this stage of the tide I'm likely to get salmon in the 20 to 30 centimetre range, and maybe some small flathead. Maybe not flathead today, it's quite cold. Maximum temperature today is only 11 degrees. We've had some really fierce surf conditions in the last few days. A lot of rain, a lot of wind and big waves. So the evidence by the weed up here above the high tide mark, a lot of weed gets chopped up from the shallow reefs offshore and then blown in and thrown up by the waves. You can see there's weed right up the top of the cobbles from when we had big surf, and then the weeds down lower from just the ordinary high tide without the driving surf. And up ahead it's like a dune of chopped up weed. Sometimes they'll be a metre or even more than a metre high, just pile up weed. And so part of my job now is to get up past the weeds to where there's clean water and sandy bottom, where I'm not going to be getting weed on every single cast, where hopefully I'll actually find some fish. Just to give you an idea of just how much weed can get thrown up on the beach after we've had a big blow. These piles of weed here, in places over a metre high. And this is at the high tide mark from last night, or perhaps pre-dawn high tide. Yeah, but these piles of weed, they're like dunes of weed that's been chopped up and thrown up by the waves. So what it might mean is there's so much weed in the water still that it might be unfishable until I get a lot further up. I might have to go 2 or 3 kilometres up the beach to be clear of all this weed, or it might go so far up the beach that I can't walk there in time. Have to wait and see. I'm now 1 kilometre up the beach from the car park. Up the top there's a pole from an old fence line that's gone on the top of the sand dune there. Just marks where there's actually a really good hole just offshore here. It's one of the best places to fish on the beach just here. You usually catch the first salmon along here and flathead and so on. But these piles of seaweed here, in places they're over a metre tall. Most of them like at least 60 centimetres, and sometimes it's over a metre tall. And the water here is full of weed for about 30 to 40 metres out. So it might be unfishable today. I'm about to turn the bend and then get up to where the big reef is, and I'll have to see what it's like up past the big reef. We've just reached the largest reef along the beach. It's a reef of exposed basalt and cobbles that's above the water at low tide, and now we're 3 hours into the rising tide. It's just underwater where those waves are out there, and you can see there's still about a half a metre high weed piles up at the high water mark, and a lot of weed in the water. And the water here is really brown and dirty. It's actually dirtier here than it was back closer to the car park. I think the dirtiness is here because of the tannin from the dark brown weed. So just like tea leaves, when you make a cup of tea, the water turns brown. I'm pretty sure the brownness in the water here is not from mud, but it's just the tannin from all the weed that's being pounded by the surf. So this is where there was a nice parapet of gravel and clean gravel and cobbles going up another 5 kilometres up the beach, and now it's just all been replaced by weed. And that big log up there that's got a burned end was actually down here behind me. So the waves were powerful enough to move it up the beach and throw it up higher on the dune. And I'm now 2 kilometres from the car park. It's taken me best part of 45 minutes to walk this far, stopping a couple of times to have a few casts. And as you can see, there's far less weed here. And if I was to keep going up another kilometre, I'd be on all but a few scattered remnants of weed. When we have calmer weather and gentler waves, tide after tide after tide, you get a nice sand spit here with deep gutters on either side. And so what happens is the fish come cruising along the beach and then they hit the sand spit, and so they tend to congregate there for a short time. So you get concentrations of fish on one side or the other, or sometimes on both sides of the sand spit, as it acts as a natural barrier to the fish's movement along the beach with the current. And flathead, they like to hang around in the lee of the sand spit either. So if the current's going right to left, the flathead tend to be on the left side of the sand spit, laying down on the bottom, waiting for bait fish to get swept over the sand spit by the current. So you can catch lots of flathead sometimes in the one spot. And sometimes you get maybe just one or two big ones. But that's generally in the warmer weather. Don't catch a lot of flathead here in the cold weather, certainly not when it's this cold. They tend to be fairly dormant when it's this cold and stay further offshore. I'm straightening the line, then I'm letting the lure sink and hit the bottom, and now I'm jigging it in. Just as I was pulling my lure out of the water, I had a hit from a small salmon. He was trying to grab it. He must have picked it up close to the shore or something. Anyway, he was hitting it literally just as I was winding along the surface to avoid hitting the gravel. Just hooked my first fish, about 20 metres offshore, right where that wave is where I hooked it. I'm pretty sure it's a salmon. I don't know how well, I can see bait fish jumping out where the fish is swimming. It's down here in front of me. Not sure how well hooked it is, and the water's muddy. Oh, it's just a little one, like 25 centimetres. Still, first salmon of the day. Yeah, so he's a beautiful little, oh no, he's nearly 30 centimetres actually. It's probably, yeah, he's probably just on 30 centimetres. And he's got him on the tail hook on my jig. It's a 45 gram slasher. There you go. Oh, come on. The drag wasn't tight enough. I just had a hit and my drag wasn't tight enough, and so I didn't hook up. And so I just tightened my drag a fraction. I've run out of battery, and then a couple of swans just flew right through the sunset afterglow, so that was pretty cool.